Cristiano, thank you. Your English is much better than my Italian. Hello, it's so wonderful to be here because we have, as Afghans, a very unique relationship with this name. I worked for about 15 years in the same neighborhood in Kabul where the emergency hospital was located and still is located. And for many, many times, I visited the hospitals where friends, family members, other people, journalists, civil society activists were treated with the utmost care and attention provided by Italian doctors. So when I was asked to come to this beautiful city to participate in the festival, I was so touched. So I'm very happy to be here. Afghanistan is a sad story, unfortunately. It's a difficult time, but organizations like yours is made for difficult times. So the country at the moment is ruled by the Taliban. And the Taliban took over Afghanistan 3 years ago. And they have waged war against journalists, women, and suppressing all kinds of voices that would speak against them. That's very sad. Also a disrespect for the legacy of so many people who lost their limbs and lives in Afghanistan, that you were part of that journey, given that the Taliban are demonstrating a very cruel face of that country to the world. Journalism was a success story. Afghanistan has been in and out of conflict, depending on how we define conflict, for the past 50+ years. No country in the world has experienced so many ups and downs and changes of political system in modern history compared to mine. We went from monarchy to communism to civil war to no government to Taliban to democracy and now back to the Taliban. All just in the past 50 years. So after the Taliban regime was toppled in 2001, the Afghan people felt free. And that was when the Constitution of Afghanistan, for the first time ever, guaranteed press freedom. And people in a society that was suppressed for so many decades felt for the first time that they can speak their mind without fear. And that resulted in a media boom. 20 years later, the country had the freest media in the entire region. Better than Pakistan, better than India, better than our northern neighbors, better than Turkey, of course China, Russia, and others, and Iran. So this was such a huge success story. Something that we were very, very proud of, and we are very, very proud of. And this was not also easy. Afghanistan, in the same time, who knows better than the emergency NGO friends, that was one of the deadliest countries for journalists as well. We lost 100 plus journalists in the past 20 years in Afghanistan. So the journey of the past 20 years for media was a success. It empowered people to speak their minds. It empowered people to feel free. It gave birth to a very vibrant Afghan media and civil society. It empowered women. I remember in the early days of our media experience in Afghanistan, we were only inviting women to talk about women because we thought women should only talk about women. But very, very soon, we had women presidential candidates, we had women MPs, we had women civil society leaders. So the democratic space, empowered by media, transformed a country. Another factor that was critical to transformation of Afghanistan was also its young population. You know that the median age in Afghanistan is only 18. And from a population of about 40 million people. So this very young population was overwhelmingly receptive of freedom and democratic values. Don't believe when people tell you that this is a tribal country, these people don't believe in freedom, they're not civilized. Yes, we have been deprived of opportunities, but it would be very unfair for people who have fought for one form or the other forms of freedom for so many years to label them as people who are against freedom and democratic values, particularly the women of Afghanistan. So that young population that enabled the democratic Afghanistan to be a success story in the country for 20 years is being taken hostage by the Taliban at the moment. The Taliban have waged war against women, civil society, media, and trying to transform the country gradually into a Talib land. So they have done, first, banned girls from going to school. But in the meantime, they have recruited 100,000 madrasa teachers. And 100,000 madrasa teachers, if they teach each one of them 100 kids, we're talking about 1 million a year. And we're talking about 10 millions in a decade. So this young population is very vulnerable to brainwashing, society becoming radicalized again, and society becoming a burden, an extra burden on the international community. So that's why I think this is not only an Afghan problem. What is our responsibility and how can we deal with it? After the Taliban's takeover, from a community of about 12,000 journalists, more than half of them have fled the country, been forced to migrate, including myself. And we moved to the United States, where we set up a satellite TV channel for Afghanistan, broadcasting from our hubs in the US and in Europe, where we rely on a vast network of journalists inside the country that they anonymously send information to us, we process it, we beam it back to the people of Afghanistan via satellite. Satellite TV is how the Afghan people watch television. It's free to air. And because the Taliban can't block internet, and they have blocked internet, censored internet massively, and they have restricted media inside the country enormously. To give you some unacceptable examples, or probably beyond imagination, is that if you're a male journalist on television, you can't talk to a female guest. Forget about an in-person interview. If you are a radio host, a male radio host, you cannot accept a call from a female caller. And if somebody would criticize on that call, even if another person, another man, criticize the Taliban, you have to write down the phone number and pass it on to the Taliban. So, given the enormous pressure on the local media, against the backdrop of that enormous success story that I just briefly explained, we thought that it's critical for us to keep the flow of information alive and make sure that radicalization trend and campaign that the Taliban have undertaken is not successful. And we have to, how to do that is to empower the Afghan people with uncensored and unbiased information. So one way to do that is to do it through media. And that is how we are broadcasting not only news and political content and analysis, but we're also broadcasting just music, because that's banned. We're broadcasting soap opera, because that's banned. We're giving voice to women of Afghanistan, because that's banned. My colleagues were telling me a couple of days ago that in one of our morning shows where people from Afghanistan call in 1 hour, they received more than 1,000 calls. Well, you cannot accept 1,000 calls in 1 hour, but that is the number of people who tried to contact that one particular show. So that means people want to talk. People want to be relevant. People want to fight back in their own little way. So, but it's the Taliban with their draconian ideologies trying to limit that space. They don't want to do it sometimes too fast. I know when they were talking to the international community, the Americans in particular in Doha, 2019, 2020, 2021, we were hearing a lot about a new Taliban, Taliban 2.0, moderate Taliban, change Taliban. We don't see that. Even right now, I think just 2 weeks ago, they codified a new, quote unquote, morality law. And in that law, it dictates media in the country that you cannot put footage and pictures of living things on TV, or you can't print them. So basically, you can't show a human on television. And it's even hard to process that what are they thinking? So, and it has been implemented in Kandahar in the past week. So in the local media in Kandahar, when the governor meets with, let's say, a Taliban governor meeting with shopkeepers to address whatever tax issues, the local media is showing footage of rivers and mountains. So they're not allowed to take pictures of the meeting and to show faces of people who have participated in that meeting. So just see the other extreme side. See where the Taliban is trying to take the country. So I think that is our responsibility first as Afghans to try to respond to that. In our very little way, we want to do it through media. But we are just one TV channel. We're just a very small number of journalists who have been migrated to other countries where we have to submit our asylum cases, where we have to get new driving licenses, where we have to build our credit scores to get a house, where we have to enroll our kids to schools, and build a new life. All of this when the international community's interest is fading out. Oh, Afghanistan, particularly in America, don't talk about it. It's a sad story. You know, and Biden is coming and saying, this country will never be fixed. So that's where I believe in small steps by individuals, by organizations. Whether if you are helping one girl to go to a secret school, or sending $50 to a very young girl who can probably enroll in some sort of an online class, or if you are part of sort of a media company where you can try to sort of resist, I believe these small steps are, if you combine them, it's going to be a very great force against the enormous challenge that we're facing. So, I'm sorry that I'm ruining the mood here, but there is no other way that I can explain the sad story of the Afghan people. But what gives me hope is also the fact that there has been no political stability in that country. So what if the Taliban are gone in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What if they're gone and they have left 10 million radicalized kids behind? Right? What if they're gone and then they have left 10 million girls who cannot read and write? So if we cannot overthrow the Taliban, or we don't have the means, or we don't want to, I think we have the means, the will, and the intention, and the motivation to interact and deal with the ordinary Afghan people. That is precisely what the emergency NGO does in Afghanistan, and I am super grateful for that role. Thank you.